Okay, so as a review from the cardiac cycle, there's some things that we can know about the heart. So, stroke volume, this is the total volume of blood that is pumped out by one ventricle in one heartbeat. And remember, each ventricle, the same amount of blood goes out of each ventricle. So it's not like there's less in the right than in the left. No, they're equal, and they each send an equal amount into the pulmonary arteries and the aorta. All right. Again, cardiac output is the amount of blood ejected by each ventricle in 1 minute. So cardiac output equals stroke volume times heart rate. So at 75 beats per minute, I mean, that's about average, times, we'll say 70 milliliters per beat, we get 5.250 milliliters per minute. So it's about 5 on average. Another thing to consider when you were talking about the cardiac cycle and the heartbeat is preload and afterload. So preload is the amount of basically pressure on that ventricle before contraction occurs. And this comes from the stretch of the ventricular walls. So the more they're stretched, so the higher the stretch, the more forceful the contraction. So if you have the more blood that's in there, the harder it's going to contract. Afterload is the resistance. So it's basically the resistance to blood flow during and after ventricular contraction. So this can come from valve issues. So valve issues like stenosis. So if those little flaps start to harden, they don't open as well and don't open as easily, and they don't open all the way, so that causes a more resistance to blood flow. Also the condition of the vessels. So if they're stenotic, if they're stiff, then they too are not going to balloon out as much and take in as much blood. So that's going to leave more blood in the ventricle at the end of contraction. So that's going to leave and systolic volume higher, which isn't a good thing. All right, so that's pretty much the cardiac cycle. Make sure you know what stroke volume is, cardiac volume, and how to calculate it. Remember, I didn't write it down, but this is end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume gives you stroke volume. And EDV is end diastolic volume. ESV is end systolic volume. Okay, and that's it.